Alex Liu, you are the director of this film, A Sexplanation, which is a very funny and informative, very slickly produced documentary about the confused state of sex education in the United States.
Hmm.
Can you just first tell me where the motivation to make this film came from?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like my sadness, my rage, my fear that the sexual shame that I grew up with is still being perpetuated today. You know that ultimately sex education is getting better in my lifetime. Some things have changed really quickly, much faster than I ever thought they would. But I still get the sense talking to people of all ages, all backgrounds, that we're still really unable to have real, true, intimate, honest, vulnerable conversations about sex. And I figured that's got to change. So that I set off on making this documentary.
Why did it take an independent filmmaker with his production team to make this film? If it's such a big issue, Alex, why did it take you guys? Why aren't there? Because we had a wonderful
Well,
documentary a couple of years ago called Waiting for Superman, which was a very good documentary made by a high profile documentarian about the state of education in
mhm.
America and teaching in America. Yet with this issue, it's come down to you. How come?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wish I had a good answer for you. It could just be, growing up gay, being queer. This is something that you're forced to confront at a very early age. I think the idea that your desires are somehow wrong is a very terrifying place to be. And you go through so much shame and suffering and just confusion. And so when I think about my life up to now, the last 20 years since I came out, I don't want anyone to have to go through that same process. And I wish at schools in the United States taught more of this, but I don't know what it's like in Australia, but in the United States, curricula is decided by elected school board members. So like no elected school board member is going to go out on a limb and say like we need to talk about masturbation, we need to talk about anal sex, we need to talk about being gay. It's just too politically, it's a political non-starter. So I'm just so terrified that there are kids out there who are going through the same thing, and frankly, adults. It's just kind of sad to me to think that many adults can go through their whole life just terrified of this thing that's a beautiful thing about being human. So I figured I didn't see people doing it. I was angry about it. I figured why not give it a shot?
Right. Now, my understanding is that the majority of the people who you spoke to do believe that there should be comprehensive sex education. You do address the issue of exposure to children, that there is fear, arguably, a justifiable fear about introducing kids to this sort of subject matter too early, and that's resulted in this huge pushback
Hmm.
against the idea of exposing kids to sex. You did, I think you do address these issues. What is your view though on what age sex education should kick in?
I think it's something that has to go on pretty much your whole life. I think there are different stages of development at which you have to teach people about sex. And I think when people think of sex education, they think of intercourse. And I'm not, I'm thinking of just, if you have a body built for pleasure, you have to understand that your body is your own. These messages around just taking care of a body, right? That's something I think gets taught very young. And so there are, I think, like I said in the film, shame gets instilled really early when, parents name every part of a body except the genitals. So you start to feel shame around a part of your body, which isn't inherently shameful, right? It's a part of your body and it's built for pleasure and it has all these uses. But if you tiptoe around it, becomes a problem. And I think I've been to so many sex ed classes now, and many of them I went into and I thought, oh, these kids are way too young. But you realize very quickly that, you know, people, just the nature of being human, you're going to be curious, right? People are curious, and parents might not like to hear this, but their kids are probably thinking about a lot of these issues much earlier than they wish. And so the alternative isn't like you keep them innocent or you tell them all about sex. The alternative is you keep them ignorant, and then they fill in their curiosity with all sorts of misinformation, disinformation from peers, from music, filling in the gaps however they can, or you make sure that it's very clear early on that any questions they have, they're totally open to ask, and that you will give an age appropriate response. And if you don't know the response, that you have the people, whether it's teachers, doctors, whoever has the training to be able to find the answers you need. Because the worst case scenario isn't that kids learn about this stuff. The worst case scenario is that they learn the wrong things about this stuff, which is often the alternative that we're left with.
I think the film identifies a problem that you just touched on, which is one of the reasons why kids turn to online pornography. But the reason they turn to it is because they're not getting information elsewhere. And the reason why they get bad ideas from pornography is that they don't have sufficient knowledge to frame it and to understand what they're seeing. There is some pretty interesting and slightly graphic conversations that you have with some of your experts that say that what you see, with online pornography has almost nothing to do with reality, with real life, and that's what young people really need to be taught about.
Yeah, it's porn is complicated for me. It's different now, but when I was growing up, porn was probably the only place where I could see two gay men have sex, and it wasn't framed around tragedy or HIV or sadness. It was validation that my desires were normal. But at the same time, the bodies that you see, the acts that you see, you don't see negotiation of consent. You don't see application of lube. You don't see stopping. You don't see erections go down. There's all these different ideas that porn. If porn is the only place you're going to be able to understand what is the sex thing, then you're going to have a very distorted view. It's the analogy that's commonly used is like it's if you're trying to learn how to drive watching the Fast and Furious movies, or you think that you can fight crime like Batman if you just train really hard, right? Those are fantasies, and it's not how an instruction manual for how you should need to live your life. But it's understandable why when you start to have sexual urges, you want to know, like, how do I do this? How do I do this right? How do I do it so it feels good for me? How do I do it so it feels good for my partner? And if there really aren't readily available resources or people you can go to and feel comfortable asking these questions, porn is going to be, of course, the place you turn, because it's the only place that it exists.
Now, I'm very interested to just explore the issue of your approach to this topic. You've deliberately taken a very subjective approach rather than an objective approach. Why did you decide to put yourself at the center of this exploration?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the film, it was just going to be like a really, I don't know if you know this TV show Nova, like, just like a really sexy public access show. It wasn't going to just interviewing, putting together experts and hearing the interesting things they had to say. But my writing partner, Leonardo Neri, during the process kept asking me, like, why is this so important to you? Why do a documentary about this? Why? And it became clear, I kept saying these stories about how all the shame I still carry, all the shame I carried into my 30s, how, I'm still unable to talk about these things, that I don't know how to get rid of this. And he kept saying, this is maybe a more interesting narrative to follow. And maybe, he found a lot of things he could relate to. As I started talking to my friends, they found things they could relate to. And so it started to think, well, maybe this is, maybe by being very, very personal and very specific to me, it gives other people the space and freedom to start to think about things specific to them. Because I think through this process, I just started to learn that, the only thing that's really normal about sex is that we're all different. There's really, we're all just so different when it comes to what turns us on, what we like, what we love, who we are. And so this is really kind of an homage to that idea, and that this might be my specific journey, but the point is not necessarily one right way to do sex, is that you need to be open and honest about your own sexual drive, your own sexuality, if you want to reach that a place of sexual health. So that was kind of the process that we got there.
The subjective approach that you took, the first person approach, also allowed you to confront some of your own prejudices, which is a valuable thing to do in a documentary. And it's obvious that you go on a learning curve during this film. You expose yourself to a Republican senator, to pro-life rallyists, anti-abortionists, and to a Catholic priest, probably the most challenging of all. And you admit on camera that, certainly in the case of the Catholic priest, that your view has kind of changed a bit. I'm very keen just firstly to know how deliberate it was that you took a self-critical approach when making this film, that you were knowingly exposing yourself to learning new things or smashing stereotypes that you held.
Yeah, I think, I think when I started this process, it did come from a place of wanting to blame those institutions, to blame the Catholic Church, to blame conservative politicians, to blame a lot of different people. But as I started going through the process, I started to realize that what I really wanted from them was them to just listen to me non-judgmentally and to respect me as a human being. I don't know how I could expect that if I wasn't willing to extend kind of the same. So I kind of slowly started, as I started to hear different people's stories and started to realize how individual sex was to everyone, I started thinking like, well, this is really, what I want really is people to love and respect all diversity. And so for me to not do the same felt dishonest, felt inauthentic, felt like felt like a different movie, and so I think through the process, this whole process has made me, I'm doing a lot of talking now, but it's made me a much better listener in terms of meeting people where they are, because I think that's the only way that you can actually get a real true dialogue.
Was it difficult for you to decide to confront, in what appears to be a very amicable and congenial exchange, a Republican senator, whose views you vehemently disagree with, but you did have a civil conversation? You realize what a refreshing thing that is to see in a documentary, obviously made by someone with a progressive agenda, that it really demonstrated how willing you were to hear opposing voices. That is something that is not germane to this culture, Alex, as you know. Nobody wants to hear anyone's opinion except opinions that agree with their own. But you have kind of broken through that.
It was a conscious decision, I think, because I don't think screaming at someone is going to change anything. I'm very terrified, actually, of how tribal the world has become. That I just can't see a way forward unless I can actually have a true discussion with the other side, to actually try my best to be in their shoes, hear what they have to say what I have to say, but not feel personal rejection or just anger anymore. I'm just so tired of feeling angry all the time. So I think, at that conversation, I went in and I tried to be very clear that I have never voted for a Republican, that I probably never will. But I'm very actually just genuinely interested to hear why he has the viewpoints that he has. And we found some common points of agreement. I think there is I think what makes us similar, there's so much more that we share than what makes us different. And we focus so much on the differences But I think that there is a wide range of, we all just want to feel loved. We all just want to feel healthy. We all just want to feel sexy, um, in whatever way that looks. And the more that we can tease that apart and see that, I just feel like that has to be the way forward, because otherwise, I don't know if I can continue being angry all the time.
Again, just to just develop this point, when you went to the rally, the pro-choice rally, my understanding is that the pro-life people you weren't expecting to see there. Is that the case?
No, so the day we got there, we knew both rallies were happening at the same time. But the
Okay.
first day, first we went, we just knew there was going to be a big women's march, and so we're like, we got to go to the women's march and hear the viewpoints, how they think about sexuality, culture. And then as we started doing research, we were like, oh my gosh, there's a anti-abortion rally right before they had got the permit for like the morning, and then the other ones in the afternoon. So we're like, oh, and now we got to go. So when we got there, we had the really wide range of views on both polls, and so yeah, we got there and we were able to talk about hear a lot of different ways of thinking about sex.
Again, the decision to cover them and to not make fun of them, however much you might disagree with their view, that's almost uncommon. I mean, the Michael Moore School of filmmaking, and we always thank him for what he did with Fahrenheit 9/11 by opening up the market to documentaries. So all respect to him for that. But he, that school probably would have made a snide remark or snuck in just some kind of barb. You don't do that in this film. You let them have their say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honest about how I am. I do feel a little disgust hearing what they have to say in the film. It was difficult, but yeah, but I think it's just, I in a way, I learned a lot going to that rally. Just that these people, they really are. It's not a, I think they're so often cast as hateful or hatred, and that's really easy to demonize them. And I don't think they're actually hateful people. I think that I don't agree with the basis of their views at all. I'm not a religious person, especially not Catholic or evangelical Christian. But ultimately, what they want is, they just want to be good. They want people to be good. They want true, intimate, vulnerable connection, and for them, it has to happen in the bonds of a heterosexual marriage. At least I can see that we're all pursuing the same thing, though maybe in vastly different ways. And again, I think. The goal for me never is acceptance. You can never accept everybody, but it's tolerance. And so again, if I want them to tolerate me, I'm going to do my damnedest to tolerate them. And so that's kind of my approach to filmmaking, at least.
Okay, this is a very serious topic. You use humor for this very serious topic. Why did you go down the humor path? And what do you think you achieved with humor that you couldn't have achieved otherwise?
I'm sick of feeling sad about this stuff. Basically, I'm sick of feeling, angry and fearful. And I think, at its best, I think the best sex I've had has been coupled with laughter and, a release of tension, which is what good comedy is, right? Just a huge release of tension. And so I think, I wanted the movie to reflect what good sex can be, right? So it's maybe thoughtful, it's open, it's vulnerable, and it's funny, it's fun, And so I think, it's also a little bit of, if you want people to eat their vegetables in a film, so it doesn't feel like homework in a documentary. It's already kind of a wide barrier or a high lift to get people to watch a documentary. So you kind of, feed them a little candy up front. You kind of help people along. And if you can get to that laughter, I think it's one of those things where, you can't. It's one of the most emotionally honest reactions you can have. So if that's your goal, to be as emotionally honest as possible with something like sex, I think it gets people. It shakes people out of maybe the shame or fear that they have about their own sexuality, and especially it's been great watching it in audiences and hearing, the whole audience laugh. Then you kind of feel this community of like, yeah, like we all do feel this weird thing about sex. Why? We shouldn't. We all, it's something that we all enjoy, and you can kind of almost feel the shame being released. So that was kind of our goal in making sure that people felt safe and they felt like it's a warm, happy communal experience watching the movie.
Yeah, and it's quite admirable that you didn't use the humour as a weapon. You don't go down the sarcastic route, as I probably touched on before. You could have, been a bit. You could have been a bit snarky. You could have been sarcastic. You could have been, used the humour to kind of jibe at people. But Alex Liu, you maintain a very congenial line of humour in this film.
Well, thank you.
And just wanted to know, were you tempted to kind of go a more extreme
yes.
route?
At the very beginning, I think, like I said, I was in a much more just angry place, right? When I started, the impetus of this film was rage, really. And so the first kind of interviews I did, the first kind of takes I did were based in that place. But as I started to watch it, I realized, this is, first of all, it's kind of a, pardon the pun, masturbatory experience. It's only satisfying me, right? That I'm getting this out there. And it's not really getting to the point I want, right? Like, how can like I keep saying over and over again, how can I expect anyone to care or listen or respect who I am if I'm not doing the same? It just doesn't work. And this took 6 years to make, so it's definitely been a journey. It really wasn't only until the last 3 years where it started to click, where I had my own, as you see in the film, I had my own kind of reawakening around, really, sex is such an integral part of being a human. To make fun of it, it's also confusing for everyone, to make snarky comments, to place anger. It's just not fair. It's just not, we're all struggling through this thing. So let's try to find a place where we can have a common sense of joy and love. And that's when the movie started to click for us.
So you wouldn't be the first filmmaker, Alex Liu, who began making a documentary with a certain set of ideas and values and notions and preconceptions and who learnt through the process of making the film that they were, wrong, or that they needed to adjust their views, that they actually learn and perhaps become a bit more tempered. And they changed during the making of the film. You join a pretty noble list of documentarians who have gone through that process.
Yeah, I mean, it was a torturous process, learning about myself, being open and vulnerable and showing the world kind of my story. But for those who maybe think they can't share a little bit more of themselves, be a little more honest, my advice is baby steps. Again, it took me 6 years to make this film, but it pays off. The fear, the confusion, the terror, slowly evaporates. So I think the more you can be that person where you're open and warm and understanding, non-judgmental, the more you'll find that coming back to you. So that's my one piece of advice for anyone who's watching.
Right. Alex, what else do you do?
So I actually started. I basically have been doing like marketing, commercials, videos. I was working for the San Francisco Department of Public Health, working with gay men there, HIV/AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases, that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's kind of where I started to feel this anger, because you start to realize just how little information people actually have about this stuff. How, people who are in their 30s, 40s who have never been taught very basic things about their bodies. And so I think that kind of also was part of my journey in getting here and wanting to give people that information, because it's there, it's readily available, it's been there for decades, but the powers that be really keep it kind of hidden. So yeah, that was another part of this journey.
Honest answer, please, as honest as you can possibly be. You're 36 years old?
I'm 37 now, yeah.
Okay. You're now 36 in the film. You're 37 years old. Alex, do you think that you're going to see the introduction of sensible, measured intelligent sex education applied across the United States? Or will you live to see what your film promotes?
So the answer is it already does exist in some parts of the country. Because we have this very federal republic in the United States, and school districts have a lot of choice about what they can do. There are school districts, Bay Area, LA, the liberal kind of pockets, where they are doing good comprehensive sex education. Will we see it in Texas? Will we see it in Florida? Will we see it in some parts of this country? I mean, I hate to say it, but I do think a generation might need to pass on first. I think it's these cultural values have been so ingrained for millennia. It's so difficult to push forward. But in the next 60 years, 50, 60 years, yeah, I think I'm pretty confident that we'll have measured, sensible sex education. Yes.
And is there a G-rated cut of this movie?
there is not. I don't know if you can make it G-rated. Maybe PG-13.
Okay.
Maybe PG-13.
Okay.
But it's interesting as we kind of pitch the film and show it to buyers and send it to people. They don't have a problem with the masturbation scenes. They don't have a problem with the discussions of genitals. What they have a problem with is the nude bodies that we put in the film, the actual human bodies, and they're not having sex. It's not arousing. It's simply just a display of a wide range of human bodies, and the nudity is really what gets people concerned. And so we could cut that, maybe get it down. But yeah, I think hopefully kids and parents together can watch this film. To me, it is like a for your teenage kids maybe, but it is somewhat of a family film to break the ice so that families can start having conversations that they really need to.
Can you just take your modesty hat off just for a moment? And I'd like you to tell me just about the awards that you've won and the good that awards do. Do awards actually help the film? Just run through them for us.
Yeah, so we've won 4 audience awards at different film festivals: Phoenix, Honolulu Rainbow, Asian American Film Festival, CineQuest. We won some jury awards, Inside Out, DC APA. Yeah, the fact that we got into any festival was amazing. And yeah, I think the awards, especially the audience awards, I really do hope they show that there's a market for this, that people are really hungry for this type of information, that if you're scared of it or you feel it might be too controversial, I think people have really been starving for good sex education for a long time. And hopefully our audience awards are kind of proof of that.
And how is the film traveling apart from its success at festivals? What other exposure have you had?
Yeah, so we're having an Australian premiere at Queer Screen right now. We're gonna have our European premiere next week at the Zurich Film Festival. It's gonna move on to Sao Paulo Film Festival. So we're starting to expand into different continents. But yeah, our goal really is to hopefully get this sold, and so that people around the world can watch it by end of this year, early next year. So fingers crossed there.
Now, Alex, a very important question. I'm speaking to you from Australia, where there are a lot of funding bodies for independent films. Government, there's a lot of government money here. It's not a perfect system, but there is money available. My understanding is that for filmmakers like yourself, that is not the case. You don't have a lot of access to money, that you have to raise it yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you raised the money for this movie.
It is begging every acquaintance you have ever met for even $10. It is piece by piece. You get as much money as you can. You make as much as you can. You cut something. You show people that you're onto something, and you get a little bit more money, a little bit more money. We are lucky that we're officially sponsored by the International Documentary Association. All that means is that money is tax deductible then, so there are places that can do that. But yeah, I think this has been a lesson in how little I know about business or finance. So that's been a great skill to develop. But yeah, it's a struggle and it's constantly on your mind. But and it's when I think back, I just can't believe we actually made this happen with how little money we actually had.
I actually was going to ask a very rude question. If you could give me some ballpark figure about how much this film cost to make.
Oh, this was like, I don't have the exact number on me right now, but it was like 200,000 US,
Oh
maybe
God,
less. So yeah,
it's
so
nothing.
we were very yeah, we called in every favor we could. I was lucky. I mean, we probably do owe many of our crew members more money. Like they haven't asked for it yet though, because I think our crew was majority female, queer. They bought into the mission of the film. They had a great time making it. They understood what they were doing. So we were very lucky in that sense that we were able to get some very talented people for a fraction of what they would normally charge. Yeah.
And I imagine that the target audience for this film are people who probably would normally hesitate to watch a film like this. Is that true?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said before, I really hope families watch it together. As awkward as that might be, I want it to be an icebreaker. But yeah, I think the best responses we've gotten are from like straight men who say it helped them talk about something with their wife for the first time that they never talked about. Parents who didn't know how to deal with their kids' questions. And some of the best responses actually have been from like Mormons, evangelical Christians, people who were like concerned that I was going to make fun of them the whole time, which I understand why they might think that. And they don't agree with everything I said, but they got something out of it. They actually were thinking, yeah, why don't I say the word penis to my kids? What's up with that? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing non-Christian about that. Why do I have these ideas around my body and my mind when it comes to sex? So I think those are some of the responses that I did not anticipate, and have just been overjoyed to hear.
That is a wonderful note to end on, I think, Alex, because it's a tribute to the balance and the sense of fairness that comes through the film. The humor of the film, I think, really just lubricates the whole discussion. And it really is a case at a time, I'll say it again, at a time when everyone is screaming at each other and they've got, everyone's locked in their own little echo chambers with social media and are so resistant to hearing, voices and opinions of people who they disagree with, which used to be the bloody bedrock of America, that you could do this. It's now like they've just forgotten about it. I think that your film actually is a tribute to the true values of America that allows for open discussion between people who disagree, and a sense of fairness and an open-mindedness to hear what other people have got to say. So kudos to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that.
No.
That gave me goosebumps.
Well,
I really appreciate
yeah.
that, and I try really hard. I do believe in the liberal project, and I think life is just more fun if you can hear all kinds of different opinions rather than just one.